Hello and welcome to the Twins Mummy NA podcast. I am mummy to 2-year-old twins, Isla and Aria. Join us on our twin adventure as I explore a range of topics on parenthood. Hello everybody and welcome to the 35th episode of the Twins Mummy NA podcast. If you've just stumbled upon this podcast, my name is Carla and I work as a TV journalist, but now I am a stay-at-home mum to twin toddlers. If you're interested in topics such as maternal mental health, parental well-being, and what life is really like for a first-time twin mum, then this is the place for you. You are very welcome. You can also check out our twin adventure on Instagram at twinsmummyNA. Now, you are very welcome to the Twins Mummy NA podcast. This week's guest is mum of 3, best-selling author and psychotherapist Anna Mathur. I first discovered Anna's work during the COVID-19 pandemic when I tuned into her wonderful podcast, The Therapy Edit. The episodes on mental health really kept me company during those long days of the lockdown. And I am delighted to introduce this episode with the lovely Anna Mathur today as we discuss a range of topics that are a very real experience for many of us in motherhood. Intrusive thoughts, overwhelm and loneliness are very real feelings that some of us do experience in motherhood. So why not grab yourself a little cup of tea and join us as we explore these important narratives in motherhood. Hello Anna, you are very welcome to the Twins Mummy NA podcast. Thank you so much for gifting us with your time. It is a real pleasure to have you with us. Before I begin, I am sure a lot of our listeners are very familiar with your incredible work as a psychotherapist. And I have to say, I particularly love the quote on your website. I remember reading it many years ago during the COVID-19 pandemic, where you mentioned that you take therapy outside of the therapy room. And that really resonated with me. Now, I'm going to share a very personal story with you. I was very nervous at the thought of attending therapy myself. But being honest with you, I listened to my very first podcast during the COVID-19 pandemic. And that podcast was The Therapy Edit. And it really kept me company during those difficult days of the pandemic. I then made a decision to start attending therapy to get some help with my fear of pregnancy and childbirth. And I am happy to say that my 2 twins, Isla and Aria, are here today as a result of that support. So I wanted to first off thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for opening up the narrative on big topics, particularly around mental health and motherhood. You never know what it really means to someone, so thank you so much. You express big feelings that many of us experience in such a personal way, so thank you so much, and I wanted to tell you that personally.
Oh, wow. Thank you. That's just the biggest privilege to hear, and to hear that your precious twins are here. And, I think sometimes we underestimate the power of being honest, don't we, about our own stories and sharing our stories with people. And I think when we do that, we can get more confident doing so and start some of that shame that I would have felt over sharing about intrusive thoughts or the duality of feelings in parenthood. You know, how we can feel so overwhelmed and frustrated, but also like we love them so much and we feel so grateful at the same time. And we can often shame ourselves for some of those difficult feelings. But as a therapist, one of the biggest privileges that I have is I get to see the behind the scenes of so many mums, so many people. And what that does, it reaffirms that feeling for me that I'm not alone, as well as I hear these stories and people sharing their lives, and it chips away at that shame for me. So I find myself being able to be confident in talking about some of these things really openly, because I know statistically, I know for sure that I'm not alone. So it feels, off the back of other people being honest with me in the therapy room, it empowers me to be open about my story for other people. So it's just lovely, and we just never know what our honesty will spark in other people, and it feels like a vulnerable thing to do, but yeah, it's a gift.
Absolutely, and a very rewarding one at that. Like you speak, as I say, you speak in such a personable way. It means so much to people. You never know who is listening or where in the world, and just what that might mean. So thank you so much. I suppose, making a start, I've listened to so many of your wonderful podcast episodes and read your books. I particularly love the one, Raising a Happy Mother. But before we delve into your work, can you tell us about Anna and what life is really like for you outside of that therapy room?
Oh gosh, it's like generally well organized chaos, to be honest. I'm someone who has historically been, I've really enjoyed feeling like I have control, or at least believing I have control over things. So, and I've been a people pleaser and a perfectionist. So my life has always looked very like givey, this givey outy, very fearful of what people think, just having my identity and doing things for other people and feeling useful. And then I had my first child just back in 2014. So he is now nearly 11. And I read all the parenting books and he was like pretty straightforward. So he made me feel really confident in my ability to feel like I had some semblance of control in parenting. And I thought, this is great. Let's crack on again. And by his first birthday, I was pregnant and it was a completely different experience. Pregnancy was different. I had my appendix out when I was 12 weeks pregnant. Didn't even know you could do that. I was so sick. I was on lots of different anti-sickness medication. And then he was born and he was a completely different kettle of fish to my first, and he had silent reflux and he didn't sleep at all, and I got postnatal depression, postnatal anxiety, I think all just from chronically being completely sleep deprived. And twin parents will just resonate with this. Like you can feel so low when you are so tired. It can feel so relentless and it can take you to depths, I think, of yourself. But what I was really challenged by was the fact that I just didn't have any control. Like I couldn't control when he slept. I couldn't comfort him. I couldn't. And it was really hard to just carry on appearing like I had everything together. And as a therapist also, I felt so de-skilled because I just couldn't help myself. And I'm pretty sure part of the reason of being a therapist was A, that I could just help other people, and B, I didn't have to let anyone else help me. I could help me too. So that really challenged that. So I started realizing, when I got to these depths of just feeling like I couldn't cope, that I really needed people, and I needed my husband to help me out, and I needed friends to support me, and I needed the doctor to understand me. And it was just, it was really hard to let myself be loved and supported by other people. I'd been really resistant to that. I was like, don't worry, I've got this. So it really stripped me back, and humbled that part of me that just thought I could do it all. And it was, a very painful lesson, but I feel like a lesson for life. And I'm sure loads of twin mums, and they don't have as many hands as they need. And it's just exhausting. And, fundamentally, you realize that it does take a village, but we have to access that and let people that love us in action. And then I had my third, she's now 6. And by that point, I think my standards for control were just dropped, and the standards of what I expected of myself and the perfectionist standards, I'd had them just wrestled away from me. So I would say that actually it's hard, it's full on, but I'm a more relaxed person because I'm kinder to myself and I let people love me. And that has been what has given me my sanity. My one of my kids is autistic, so that brings a different kind of iteration of parenting, I would say, and challenges, and learning how to respect that I need rest and what that looks like. And it's just, I love walking and talking and being creative and just pottering around home. And despite the fact I live a lot, there's a lot online about me as a person and what I just kind of like living a small, simple life. I have a handful of friends that know me quite well, and I'm an introvert, and people wouldn't really know that or imagine that. So there we go. There's a bit of a blurb.
It's lovely to hear that. Obviously, it's the first time that I've ever met you, and you read your words on the page. I hear you talking in my ear, but it's just so lovely to be able to hear that in person, and just been very open and very honest. And keeping with motherhood there, I'd love to go back to the very beginning about Those early days of motherhood. Motherhood, certainly for me, it can feel really messy at times. My hormones were all over the place. I was recovering from major surgery of my C-section and trying to learn how in the world to take care of two brand new babies. It just felt like such a huge transitional period in our lives here at home, like nothing that I'd ever experienced before. If there are any listeners out there who are currently in the trenches of those early days of motherhood and perhaps maybe are finding the days and the nights a little bit difficult, what would you say to them?
I would say go gently on yourself. Go gently on yourself. I think sometimes we need to make sure that we are not holding the normal standards to ourselves, the normal expectations of, I will do this in my day. I will produce this amount of, things ticked off my to-do list. I will maintain all these relationships and I will send birthday cards and I will get back to emails in this time frame. And I think sometimes when we go through times of stress and transition, no matter how wonderful it is still stressful, right? Because we're creatures of routine and habit and familiarity, and that's what makes us feel safe. And when we have a baby, familiarity and routine are very much kind of thrown up in the air. So we can feel quite destabilized. And that doesn't mean you're not grateful. It doesn't mean that you don't love your baby or your babies. It just means that you're having a really normal human response to life being completely turned upside down, and normal and familiarity just feeling just out of reach. So if you're finding it hard, it's because it is. It's not because you're failing. It's not because you're not resilient enough. It's not because you don't know enough stuff. It's just because it is really hard. And I think so, take away any shame or self-criticism or guilt that you're finding something hard, because it just is. You're not failing. I think sometimes it's recognizing that we can then put more pressure on ourselves, right? We can be like, right, I need to try harder. I need to do more things. I need to get more things in place. And actually, sometimes what we need to do is actually find ways to ask less of ourselves. And I say this, and I know that this sounds completely batty, so you're going to have to bear with me. But what I say to a lot of the mums that I work with, it sounds terrible, so bear with. It's like, imagine that you have another child. And I know when you've got two, at the same time screaming at you, to think, actually, I cannot possibly imagine having another child. But that other child is you. That other child is that vulnerable part of you that needs a hug, that part of you that goes, this is hard, that part of you that it's so easy to speak to and respond in a way that you would never respond to your other babies. And I think sometimes the pressure and the depths that we go to is because we love hard. We're loving our baby, our babies. We're giving, we're tending to. But actually, when it comes to that part of us that is needy, and that part of us that wants a hug, and that part of us that needs a snack or a drink or a rest, we can just be so critical. So we're being nice to our baby, and then we're being mean to ourselves. And we're saying, for goodness sake, stop being so needy. Like, wait for the drink. I'm not getting you a snack now. You shouldn't be needing a hug from someone. You should be just getting on with it. Get on with it. And I think, to challenge people to think, you need to be thinking of yourself as that other child that is just feeling like life's been turned upside down and normal is nowhere to be found. And she needs a hug and she needs a snack. And she needs to speak to someone and feel validated. So it sounds really counterintuitive, because who wants to add another kid into the mix? But that kid's already there. That part of you is already there. And when we're ignoring it and deprioritizing it, it's just going to get louder and it's going to come out sideways. And so, yeah, that's my advice. Imagine having an extra kid.
I think that's such a special way to look at it, one that I had never even thought of before. Picking up on the comment that you made there about being critical on ourselves, a big thing for me, and I really love to talk about, are intrusive thoughts in motherhood. Now, certainly in my experience, these can range from, how am I going to manage taking care of two babies of my own when my husband returned to work? Or, do you know what, I'm really exhausted here, but I don't want anyone to think that I'm struggling, so I don't ask for help. So when people ask me, are you okay, Carla? I'm like, grand, thanks, I'm fine, thanks. But, that's really not the truth when people ask me how I am really doing. How can we work on our intrusive thoughts when they do crop up for many of us in motherhood?
Yeah, so intrusive thoughts is such a big topic and such an important one to think about. And it can just be those thoughts. So intrusive thoughts is any thoughts that just kind of lurch their way into your mind unprompted. So it could be something funny. It could be like, I don't know, the one that I get whenever I go to a wedding is always, when they say, does anyone here know of any reason, why these two should, and I'm like, oh, I just want to put my hand up. And I just get this like intrusive thought of just jumping up out of my chair. And I know I'm not going to do it, but it's just our minds play all the time. There's always a part of our mind that is super vigilant, thinking about risk and responsibility and the power that we have and the vulnerability that we have and the things that we could do and what we shouldn't do and what aligns with our values. It's always filtering. And I think sometimes, when we've got energy and headspace, we can think, oh, that's ridiculous. That's a silly thing to think. That's all right. You're not going to do that. But when we're tired and we're frazzled and we're sleep deprived, it's so much harder to get that thought and think, that's just a thought. We start thinking, what does that say about me? What if I actually do that? I used to have, so when my baby had silent reflux, and some nights I was getting like 40 minutes sleep. It was horrendous. And I remember thinking, having these intrusive thoughts of dropping him down the stairs. That's a really common one, throwing him down the stairs. And I think what can happen is that we can suddenly just heap a load of shame and criticism. And what does that mean about me? What does this say about me? That then we shut down. We don't want to tell people what we're thinking and feeling because we think, what will they say? What will they? They'll be horrified. They'll think, who are you having these thoughts? When in reality, again, that self-preserving part of our brain is just purely trying to seek safety. So your brain doesn't care what is stressful, right? It could be a boss shouting at you at work. It could be an alarm going off just in your ear. Your body will say, make this stop and get away from it. Okay, that's just this primitive part of us to keep us safe. And it is really challenging because what happens when we're a new mum or when we're a mum at all, or when we love anyone and we're having these thoughts, is that we have that primitive part of our brain goes, this is stressful. We need to fight it or flee it. We need to make it stop to return to homeostasis. But we also have this maternal part of our brain going, this is my baby and I love my baby and I'm grateful for my partner, or I'm, and it's just like these two things can just be completely warring with one another. But it's so important that we get that intrusive thought and we can think, you know what, this is just that part of my brain just wanting safety. I'm just feeling exhausted. I'm feeling confused. I'm feeling conflicted. And as we can find compassion for ourselves, we heap less pressure on ourselves to be thinking and feeling differently. And the intrusive thoughts, it's always worth saying that if you've experienced trauma, or if those intrusive thoughts just feel relentless and horrible and you're really struggling with them, then absolutely do speak to someone. But just even understanding what they are, what they actually mean, and how much, then we can choose how much power to give them. So, when I had intrusive thoughts of dropping my baby down the stairs, I would think, first of all, I was just horrified. What does this mean about me? And then when I had some headspace, I think, you know what, I'm just really tired, actually. That's just showing how exhausted I am. What help do I need? Who can I speak to? How can I go gently on myself today? How can I make the path that bit smoother? How can I get more rest, even if it doesn't look like sleep that I need? What can I do to pull back and get myself a little bit more resource? So yeah, we can't control what thoughts come into our head, but we can start thinking about how we want to respond to them, what power we want to give them, or whether it's just that we think, damn, I must be flipping tired for those thoughts to be, coming out like that. And it didn't say anything about me and my values and my love. It just says everything about the fact I'm absolutely exhausted and I could probably do with a bit more rest and support.
I love that what you say there about having more compassion for ourselves. Lately, I feel like overwhelm is such a huge thing that many of us experience in motherhood. I certainly find it tight going at times as a mum of multiples. And as mums and dads of multiples, we are always outnumbered by children. We've double the nappies, double the formula, and double the work when it comes to raising our little families. Can you offer any advice to those out there listening who perhaps just feeling that family life can just be so very overwhelming at times?
Yeah. So first of all, taking any guilt away from finding overwhelming things overwhelming. You are having a human response to an overwhelming circumstance. Something else I would think about is, where are you applying perfectionism? Where are you raising the bar and expecting too much from yourself? How can you lower the bar? And I think, we can feel, oh, if I lower the bar, then I'm just going to it's going to be like that forever. And it's actually thinking, well, this season of life that I'm in is really full on. What do I need in this season of life? Because I think often we think, it'll get better when they're a bit older. It'll get better at the weekend. I'll get what I need. When actually, if we keep kicking the can of our needs down the road, like, they don't go away or wait for us, they just get more. So it's thinking, how can I meet some of these needs now, even if in the smallest way? If I need a break, but I can't have one until the weekend, how can I get a bit of a break today? What would that look like? Would it look like, when one or both of them happen to be sleeping at the same time, I am going to refuse to do stuff. And I use this little example because I historically found it very hard to rest without feeling guilty or restless. Imagine that you have a phone charger sticking out your bum and you are plugging it into the wall and you are literally recharging. That is what is happening when you are resting, when you are slowing down. You are gathering resources for yourself that you will probably need very soon. So rest is incredibly productive in and of itself. We need it. We need it guilt-free. We need it, especially when you've got multiple kids. Gosh, it's so demanding. So yeah, imagine that you're plugging yourself into the wall. And even if 5 minutes, if you were running out the house and you had like 1% battery on your phone, you'd take that 5 minutes and you plug it in. You wouldn't think, oh, there's no point, right? Because that might get you 3%. To keep you going for another half an hour. And we value it when it's our phone, but actually we need to equally value it when it's us.
Absolutely.
And our resource and our capacity. So just think, where can you reduce the pressure? Not forever, you don't have to reduce your standards forever, but where can you do that now to, just take yourself into account at this overwhelming time.
That idea of mom guilt, even father guilt, is a huge thing. Like, I've chatted about this to so many mums that I've met at the taught groups that we attend each week. And a lot of us feel really guilty as mums of multiples. I'll give you an example. Certainly, from my perspective, if at home here, both Isla and Aria are crying at the same time, and I have to settle one twin before I'm able to help the other, that feels really, really tough. Like, that's really hard, and we're in the trenches of that real toddler stage at the minute. And logistically, like, I'm not able to walk independently outside with them in public on my own, purely for their own safety, because we're in that little in-between stage at the minute. So they are in the pram more often, I imagine, than a single child would be. And I feel so guilty about that, mom guilt, I've heard it so many times at the baby classes, is a very real thing for some of us. Is there any advice that you could offer to help us not to beat ourselves up? We're just trying to do the best we can in a given situation in motherhood.
That's exactly it, isn't it? I think the most powerful question you can ask yourself is, am I doing anything wrong? Am I actually doing anything wrong? Right, I'm picking up one kid, comforting them, and then I will get to the other. Am I doing anything wrong, or am I just doing what I can do in these circumstances? And often, that guilt just sits between the gap of, this is what I can do and this is what I feel like I should be doing, which is often superhuman. You only have 2 arms. So I think sometimes just recognizing that, that expectation, that reality are 2 very different things. And another one is to think, what would you say to a friend who was telling you she was feeling guilty about the same thing? If your friend said, oh, I just feel so guilty because this morning the one was upset and I was holding them, and then the other one was just on their own, kind of having a meltdown. And you just say, so hard. Yeah. You can't do it all. It's so hard because you want to be there for both of them at the same time. You literally can't. That is tough. But I think it's so important to remember that foundation of love and presence, more often than not, is the most important thing. Yeah. Right. You love them. You are there for them. They feel safe in your presence. Therefore, they will be able to navigate those moments of just upset and having to wait. because they know you're there, they know you'll get to them, they feel safe in that knowledge. That's the foundation upon which these little circumstances and moments that can feel so stressful really do sit. It's like if you have, your closest friend or your partner, you feel safe with them, they love you, right? And maybe you have a little argument with them, you have a disagreement, but actually you feel quite safe to express how you feel or what you think or your opinion, because that foundation of love is it gives you that safety. Right, that's at the end of the day, that's there, so it enables you to have these moments and still feel safe, because that is what you will return to. So yeah, there's going to be so many moments like this where you can't split yourself in two, but actually they know that they're loved and they know they're safe, they know you're there, and that is just amazing. And I love all the different studies that say, there are so many of them, and they always say, getting it right 60% of the time, that's good enough, because perfect parents do not prepare children for a very imperfect world where they have to wait, they have to trust, they have to, they'll get disappointed, they'll get let down, they'll be failed, and in these moments, as we're there, these are breeding grounds for that gentle learning over time, that for life. And it's normal, but it's hard.
So I even feel bad about saying motherhood's hard. They feel that, they shouldn't be feeling angry or frustrated, or they shouldn't be feeling overwhelmed, or they shouldn't be feeling this way, that they're a mum. How lucky are they to have a family? And talk to some of the mums, and in my experience, I have definitely fallen into that trap as well. But Isla and Ari are definitely my biggest teachers, and I try to remind myself that, look, we are doing the best that we can. There are hard days, absolutely. They are happy days, and there's those days in between that we just do what we can do to get by, and that is good enough. If everybody's fed, if everybody maybe had a little nap, if maybe played with a couple of toys, and we're sleeping soundly in our cots at night, that's a good enough day for me. But I suppose I'd love to talk about a huge topic that is very close to my heart, and that is fear. In life, everybody experiences fear in a different ranges, or about different things in life. Now, the one that I would like to talk about is fear in pregnancy and childbirth. Now, I have been very open and honest in the podcast about my experience of that and the unknownness of having a family. Whenever I was a child, I had heard so many scary old stories about pregnancy and about childbirth that made me even question my own ability to be able to do it and to have a family. But I am thankful to say that I faced my fear of the unknown. It wasn't easy and it took some time, but I worked with a fantastic team at the maternity unit here in Antrim Area Hospital in Northern Ireland, who supported me every single step of the way. And as I say, Isla and Daria are here today as a result of that. Feeling afraid in life can be so debilitating, certainly in my own personal experience. Do you have any advice for those out there who may be listening and who also feel afraid? What would you say to them?
Oh, it's so hard, isn't it? Because I think sometimes, and it is, again, it's that inner child, it's that part of us that just feels young and scared and just wants reassurance. And sometimes we all feel like we just want someone to come along and put their hands on our shoulders and look us square in the eye and promise us that everything is going to be okay. And no one can do that. No one can do that. And that's the hard and painful thing, is no one can promise us that nothing bad will ever happen. No one can promise us. And it's so hard because that's just what we crave. And I think, a few different things is finding ways to feel safer in the uncertainty. And that can look like making sure that you've got a good support network around you, making sure that there are 2 or 3 people in your life who know what you're worrying about, who can be that calming, loving, present voice that can so often be really hard to give ourselves. So it's making sure that you're talking, making sure that you have people alongside you, basically, when you're worrying, that so at least that you're not alone in that. And I think it's finding some really amazing tools for anxiety. And that's really what it is, isn't it? This fear is what we're talking about. Is this anxiety? And it's always those worst case scenarios. And we find ourselves ruminating over what might happen. A tool that I love, a little mantra that I love is I will cross that bridge if I get to it. And it's this reminder that you have crossed so many bridges in your life that you would not have ever even conceived that you could possibly cope with. You know, the challenges, the curveballs, the ruptures in relationships, the unexpected things that have happened. You know, there will have been times at points that you thought, you know, if that happens to me, I couldn't do it. I couldn't cope. But here you are, here you are having crossed every single bridge that has ever come across your path. And yes, it might have been painful. And yes, it might have been scary. And yes, it might have, been really, really hard and challenging, but you've crossed them. So it's also this reminder that actually so many of the bridges that we feared we might cross in life, in our days, in our anxious moments, they never happened. We never had to confront them. The worst case scenario never, ever happens. So I like that kind of little reminder that, I will cross that bridge if I get to it. And if I make sure that I've got a good support network who know where I'm at and how I'm feeling, actually, if I do have to cross any scary bridges, I will not be on that bridge on my own. So little ways to help you feel safe when you are feeling anxious. I love an interruptive technique. So counting back from 103 is really good to stop rumination, because you can't go off down that worst case scenario when you're doing that. So that's a really lovely one to interrupt that rumination. Another one is to use some of those breathing exercises you learn in the classes, for just exhale, just extend your exhale, breathing deeply, because when we're feeling anxious and we're stressed and we're full of those activating hormones, we're often breathing in a really shallow way. And so instead of what we often do is go to the rational, we start thinking, no, it's probably not going to happen. It's probably our body is not feeling safe, right? So we can go to the rational, but ultimately that anxiety sits in our body, right? Doesn't it? We know what that feels like. Our body does not know what is real and what is imagined. So if we're imagining this worst case scenario, our body is supplying us with all the hormones as if we are actually living it, right? So worst case scenario, we break our own heart twice. Worst case scenario, we physiologically live through that horror. We can feel grief, right? We can wake up from a dream feeling grieving for someone that is still in our lives. And this is how powerful it is. So when we engage in those breathing exercises, whichever one you may like, it doesn't really matter. It's just, it says to your body, you're safe. You're safe. As if you're saying to that vulnerable inner child, that is just freaking out. You're like, I'm here. We're going to do this together. We'll cross that bridge if we get to it. And it's just finding those really powerful little ways just to feel safer in that uncertainty.
I really love that. I think the most important word there for me was if it happens, if we do have to cross that bridge. But like I can say with my hand on my heart, I'm very thankful that I took that leap of faith and faced that fear and finally brought a little family into the world. And happy to say that my experience was very much a positive one. And of all the things that I worried about and agonised over beforehand, not one of them came true. I learned a lot about myself and facing the fear. It was not an easy road, definitely not. But was it a worthwhile one? Yeah. When I hear the little giggles in my house and watch Ayla and Aria play together, they're a constant reminder of that journey that I was on to bring a little family into the world. But it was the best thing that I ever did. The hardest thing that I ever did, but definitely the most rewarding one as well. I had to take a little short break there. I had 2 toddlers whose emotions needed settled. I'm not only talking about settling our own emotions this morning, but the toddlers needed their emotions settled. Ayla and Aria were fighting over the same book, but you know what? We handled the situation. We have managed it. All is well in the world for now. So grab the microphone and I'm back chatting with Anna again. Thank you so much for your patience, Anna. You are so good. But I suppose I want to pick up where we left off. We're talking about big, heavy topics here, and I have one more to mention. I suppose, if that's okay with yourself, is the topic of grief. I have spoken to I've met and connected with lots of mums and dads through the Instagram page, through the podcast, through baby classes and tots, and a lot of us have actually experienced grief in motherhood. I've talked about managing grief and loneliness as a new twin mum in the podcast before. My father had passed away unexpectedly when the girls were 5 weeks old. You know, and it was a difficult time in the beginning. You know, managing those hormones, recovering from the C-section, and learning to look after Hela and Ari as two newborn babies, and thinking, what has life become now? But I remember coming home from Dad's funeral, and I just sat in silence for an hour or two, you know, just trying to really process what had just happened over the past few days prior to that. And one of the girls started crying, and they needed their nappy change. So I just very slowly got up, I changed their nappy, and I made dinner for all of us and just kept moving forward. I put one foot in front of the other, but very slowly allowed myself to grieve whilst continuing on with family life in the process as well. You know, the girls needed a mum. I had to care for them, so that's what I focused on, and it really helped me. You know, but sadly, there are many of us out there who have lost loved ones and are going through that grief process. Do you have any advice for those out there who are feeling and experiencing this very human emotion?
Yeah. I mean, I just want to say to you, wow, you know, what a lot for you to have carried. And as we were talking earlier about those bridges that we have found ourselves upon that we never would have conceived, you know, if someone had said to you a number of years ago that would happen, you know, you'd have 5-week-old babies and you would say there is no chance in hell I could possibly make it through that. You know, and here you are. And I know that with grief, it's not a case of kind of getting over it or making it through. We kind of, our life grows around it, right? It changes who you are. Like nothing is ever the same again, but things just, yeah, you just find a new foundation of familiarity to build life upon in the absence of that person. So I just think that's, you know, such a testament to you. And also, and I think this is so important when we think about other people that have walked through the fires of our worst case scenario. So there will be some people listening who say, I could not do what she has done. But here you are, you know, you're doing it, and you are sharing the story, and you're doing it, and you are sharing the story, and you are encouraging and empowering other people in the sharing of your story. And I think what we often don't talk about is post-traumatic growth and how we grow through these experiences and they change us forever, but there is still life to be lived and there is still joy to be experienced in different ways. And that is beyond the dark depths of grief as well. And I think sometimes it's really good, you know, when you really fear something and you think, I can't possibly do that, to look at other people who are that few steps ahead, a few months ahead, years ahead, you know, to see them smile, to see them doing things that set their heart on fire, like you doing this podcast, and just feeling inspired that, you know, you walked through what would one day have been your worst case scenario, and you're here, you know, you're here and you're loving and you're living. And so I think, yeah, that's a really important to connect with people that a little bit further down the line. And that's the beauty of social media and podcasts, isn't it? And the other thing is, I think it's just, as you were saying, you know, make sure, and this is so hard to do because life is full and fast and parenting is demanding, and every little moment of our mind and our time could be so easily consumed with life, right? But grieving is a process. Grieving is something that we actively do, and we can choose not to. You know, we can shove it down and we can just crack on and we can fill our mind and our time. But what I would recommend to people is that as a therapist, I see that grief can be very patient. It can wait. It can wait years. You know, if people don't want to grieve and they busy every opportunity to grieve out of like they just fill it, is that they will carry that grief, and that grief will wait until there is a time or a season in life where there is space for it. And then it can come forth as if the loss was yesterday, right? Because it just waits. So I love what you're saying, is that you found that time to grieve. You grieved through parenting, you grieved through the day-to-day, you made space for that and you allowed that to be. So that is exactly what I would recommend. Is grief comes in waves, doesn't it? You can be doing something and you can feel that wave swelling up and it hurts and it makes your heart ache. And when it reaches the top, a bit like with a contraction, you can feel like this is the most painful feeling. and I want to make it stop. But actually you start to trust that actually that wave will soften, and then there'll be another wave. But every wave, just again with the contractions, it's such a helpful comparison, is that every wave, you won't have that exact wave again. You've ridden that wave, you felt that wave, you felt that weight, you felt that sadness, you've allowed that to move through you. And it's an energy. It's very physical grief, isn't it? It's not just about remembering someone. It's you feel it in your body, you feel that loss, you feel that shift. And just make sure that you are giving yourself space to grieve. And that might look like you spend 10 minutes journaling and just writing how you're feeling. It might look like that you feel that wave of grief come and you just hold on, just like you did with in stressful moments in parenting, or in moments of contractions and tightenings. You just hold on, just think, oh, I'm going to make space for this. This really hurts. It's softening, and just let that wave. Just talking to people, answering questions honestly. If someone says, how are you doing? Just think, I want to give them a more real answer than I might be tempted to do so. And it might be, you know what, I'm all right. I'm hurting a bit today, if I'm honest. And knowing that the hard thing is that someone can't fix it and make it better for us. And that can be the really painful thing, right? What's the point in talking about it if it makes me feel sad and there's nothing they can do? But in reality, knowing you're not alone and having those feelings heard and being acknowledged for the different layers of life you're living through, there's something incredibly therapeutic and powerful in just knowing you're not alone.
Whilst you are going through the grieving process, loneliness seems to crop up alongside that as well. Loneliness is such a huge topic. I have talked about it in the podcast before and on Instagram, but loneliness, even in motherhood, can be a very real emotion for some of us. I certainly felt very lonely in those first days as a twin mum. I'll be very honest, I was very much a career person before. I hadn't even changed a nappy before the girls came home from the hospital. So whenever we came home, I kind of thought, what even is life now? Life became so unrecognizable, and as a result of that, I felt really lonely. I remember it was around day 3, and I was changing one of the girls' nappies, and I just burst into tears. It was just so hormonal. I was like, I can't do this because I put the nappy on the wrong way. I can't do this. I don't know how to do. I don't know how to be a mum. And you think about it now, the girls have just turned 2. If you really stop and think to yourself, look how far we've come. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. You wouldn't believe it yourself.
Yeah, we need to do that sometimes, and we need to stop, and we need to just look at ourselves and just say, wow. Wow, look at me go. Look at what I'm doing. Look at this. I couldn't have believed that I could do this. Or I couldn't believe that this would ever feel so normal, or this would ever feel so familiar, or that this wouldn't break me in the way it felt like it did at some point. And I think, we grow as we go, right? We grow as we go. And I think we expect ourselves to grow at a rate that is like, bam, we have a baby. We should know what we're doing. And actually, it's like we don't just step into a whole new job in an industry that we've never worked at and expect ourselves to know exactly what we're doing. It's a very tall order. And then you add hormones and tiredness into a mix, and it's even harder. So, gentleness, it's coming back to gentleness and self-compassion, isn't it? And just thinking, what? Maybe the response I'm having and the feelings I'm feeling are actually more normal than I have been, acknowledging.
Compassion, I know we've chatted about it before, but it's such a huge thing. I suppose another big thing which would be very important would be that idea of community. With that loneliness, I remember just thinking to myself, okay, look, there has to be something that we can do about it here. And I had a little look online to see if there was anything, and there wasn't any support networks or groups at that time for parents of multiples. So I decided to do something about that, and I just set up, I started the Instagram page, and I started connecting with lots of mums and dads here in Northern Ireland and then right across the UK and across the world. It just was phenomenal. I was quite overwhelmed by it, but I organised just a coffee meetup or a little walk when the weather's good here in Northern Ireland, where we meet once a month. In fact, the next one's happening this Saturday, and I can't wait to see everybody again and hear how they're doing, but it just gives us an opportunity to have a couple of hours to ourselves and just chat about, we have a cup of coffee and say, how's things going? And it just gives us us that, little safe space among ourselves to chat with whatever we want to talk about, and people who just get it, just understand. And we're all going through the same chapter in our lives as well. But unity is such a huge thing, and human connection, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it? And I think we are creatures of connection, and we are creatures of community, and we're wired to be around others. We're wired to feel a part of something, and not only for support, but actually because of how good it feels to be able to pass on that support and to be able to support other people as well. And I always say, make sure that you've got 2 or 3 people in your life who really know how you are, because that's the important thing. When you're in the thick of it, it can feel really hard to reach out and start those conversations. So start those conversations when you're not in the depths of it, so that person knows where you are, and it's not like you're having to scrabble around to find the words and work out who to say them to when you're when you can't see the wood for the trees. So just keep being open and honest. And I used to think that vulnerability and honesty would actually push people away, like if they really knew how I actually felt sometimes, then they just wouldn't be able to handle me. But the most wonderful thing is that I have found the opposite to be true, is that the more honest I've been with people, the more it's moved us together. The more that you feel like you're actually doing life alongside other people, and that's community.
That's so beautiful. I love that. That idea of just going through the same thing and people just really understanding what you are going through, and the gift of your time and listening to people. I don't think there could be anything more precious. I have felt lost in motherhood at times. This idea of my identity in the world now, what is that with this new transition in motherhood? But one thing, and I'll be honest with you, it's really helped me, is actually reading your books, Anna. At the minute, I love them. I really do. Like last night, I'm rereading Mind Over Mother. Isla woke up at 2:30 in the morning. I don't know what happened, and I was just like, oh, I'm so exhausted. So I was just sort of soothing her in my hand, and she fell asleep in my arms. But I was literally had Isla sleeping in my arm, and on my Kindle, your book, going through the words, and they feel like a warm blanket. They do, and like I can visualize you. I can just hear you saying them off the page. I've never journaled before, but I bought a book this last weekend. In the book you had talked about how you would gift yourself a journal and a nice fresh book. So I've actually started to do that, and in the hard, tough moments like that, perhaps maybe both the girls are crying at the one time, or I'm trying to settle emotions, or we're up at 2:30 to 4:30 in the morning. Your books have been really, really helpful. It just made me view things in a completely different way, and equally to know that I'm not alone. But you also have a new book coming out very soon as well. Please do tell us about that. I'm really excited. First of all, tell us a little bit about it, and then where we can get it.
Oh, thank you so much. So this is my 6th book, which was absolutely wild. And Mind Over Mother was my first book. So I tend to just write the books that I need or needed. And this one's called The Good Decision Diary. And it's about how to make better decisions more of the time, not all of the time. And it's talking about self-sabotage. And where sometimes we know that we need to talk to someone, but when they ask us how we are, we just say, no, we're fine. Or we really know we want to move our bodies a bit more, but when the opportunity comes, we just don't. And I think it's recognizing that sometimes making good decisions is really hard. It's really hard. There's a lot of things working against us. We like comfort. We just like to do things how we've always done them. So how do we change when it's really hard to? And how do we find compassion for ourselves when we walk into the wrong decision with our eyes wide open? So it's just all about decision making, but in a very human way, and just helping us make more good decisions sometimes, not all the time, to be kinder to ourselves. And that's available on all the normal places. Amazon.
I'm really looking forward to reading. So it's The Good Decision Diary, and it's coming out on the 7th of August. Brilliant. So coming to the very end of our chat today, my husband has very kindly, he's working from home today. He has spent the past hour looking after Isla and Doria during his lunch break, and he's just sent me a text message saying, I need to go back to work. So would you mind actually if I just brought Isla and Doria in for 5 minutes? I'd love them to meet you just to end off the podcast. Now, you're well warned. It's going to be absolute chaos, but just bear with me. Mommy's going to introduce you.
Oh, look.
So look. I
Hello.
introduced you to somebody very
Hey.
special. Look,
Oh,
that's Mama's microphone. Go
hey.
easy.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's the perfect toy, isn't it? Nice squishy, squishy, squishy.
Hello.
Yeah,
And you said
all
hello
good.
to Anna. So this is like who's
Hello.
eating the microphone.
You are, aren't you, tasty? Very tasty.
It's absolute chaos here. I'm just looking at my watch. It's coming up to lunchtime here. So I'm going to have to
Oh,
get
is it?
a couple of egg and toast to the
Go
go.
and get some
The
grab.
two hungry ladies. But
Oh, how
thank you so much. They're
wonderful.
away. Thank you for your time today, Anna. I really enjoyed chatting with you. You're so personable and easy to talk to. These are big topics that we have explored today, and you have helped us to understand them more and given us some really beneficial tips on how to move forward and do the best we can in any given situation that parenthood presents.
Thank you for having me. Have a lovely lunch. Enjoy. Thank you. Thank you so much for me. I've loved talking to you.
You too. I enjoyed every
What a
single
gift of a
one them.
podcast.
If you want to find out more about Anna, you can follow her on Instagram. You can, of course, hear her wonderful podcast, The Therapy Edit, and check out her fantastic collection of books as well. A reminder that Anna's new book, The Good Decision Diary, will be coming out at the beginning of August. Thanks again, Anna. Take care and keep in touch. Well, that's it for this week's episode. Thank you for your time today. I will join you next time for a chat on the Twins Mommy NI podcast. In the meantime, take care and remember there is always hope.